something slightly different today. Instead of doing just my regular movie review, I'm gonna do quick reviews. Basically, these were movies that I meant to do reviews on. I either got occupied with other movie reviews, or I was focused on something else entirely. So for the first of my quick reviews, I'm going to talk about The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and my general thoughts on this movie are that I liked it. I thought it was just as good as the first Amazing Spider-Man. Although in terms of narrative structure, I will give it to the original, because with this movie, there's just so much crap going on, because you got Peter Parker trying to figure out what happened to his parents, he's trying to fix things up with Gwen Stacy, he's patching things up with Harry Osborn, who he hasn't seen in like a decade, and there's the whole Sinister Six build-up. Just too much crap going on. And special effects for this movie are great, and even though this movie has like 3 to 4 villains, we only get focused on like 1 or 2 of them. And Electro, in terms of his backstory, it's pretty cool, but I feel like it's very underutilized. And as for the secondary villain, Harry Osborn, I felt they just kind of shoehorned him becoming the Green Goblin. Like, I just would have had Harry Osborn just be Harry Osborn, then have him transform into the Green Goblin in like either the Sinister Six spin-off or the Amazing Spider-Man 3. And the soundtrack is pretty good, but I feel it's very underplayed because it's a Hans Zimmer soundtrack. You usually know a Hans Zimmer soundtrack when you first hear it. This year, it was just very underplayed. And this movie should have been more like the Ultimate Spider-Man, because this movie borrows a lot more elements from the Ultimate Spider-Man than it does the mainstream counterpart. For example, if you look at Electro in the movie, he looks more like his Ultimate counterpart than he does his mainstream counterpart. Same with the Rhino. He looks more like his Ultimate counterpart than he does his mainstream counterpart. Even the detail about Harry Osborn being gone for 10 years was borrowed from the Ultimate counterpart. So, for my final rating of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I give it a 3 out of 5. I had the mindset, like many other people that came to watching this movie, or at least hearing about it, because we all thought about the 1995 movie Judge Dredd. That's why I'm talking about the recent reboot Dredd. And to my surprise, it was actually a pretty damn good movie. From like the costume design to like the soundtrack, and the way they depict the Judge Dredd character was a lot better here than in the 1995 Stallone movie. And I love the slow-mo effects in the movie. I think they're some of the best slow-mo shots since like The Matrix. And also, when it comes to sidekick characters, I hate sidekick characters. Because when I think sidekick characters, I think of like the X-Men characters in terms of how OP they are. But I like the way they utilize this one character because she's a sidekick character, but she's not OP like I first thought she was gonna be. And my only dislike towards the film is the main villain. I felt the main villain was just really bored, and I didn't find her to be that interesting at all. And yeah, that's really about it for Dredd. In terms of my final rating of Dredd, I give it 4 out of 5. My overall thoughts about Kick-Ass 2 are that it was an okay sequel. Even though I still do prefer the first Kick-Ass movie, this one was just okay. And there is a lot for me to like about it, because I love the costume designs for both the heroes and the villains. And I like how well it sticks to the source material, both the actual comic this is based on and the Hit Girl spin-off. And Jim Carrey does make this movie, even though it only appears in it for like 45 minutes. Although I think my main complaints about the movie are the tone of the first film is lost in this movie, because the first film felt realistic in a sense of, oh, you got this normal kid who's basically trying to be a real life superhero. Well, in this movie, it's just everyone else, there's a bunch of other like vigilante superheroes, and it just felt more like a standard superhero sequel for me. And the CGI, granted they don't show much of it, looks like shit. And everyone was praising the Hit Girl performance in this movie. I like Hit Girl in the previous movie because it was pretty funny to see a little girl swear and beat the living shit out of fully grown men. This here, it just wasn't the same. And yeah, that's really about it for Kick-Ass 2. It's just an okay sequel. So for my final rating of Kick-Ass 2, I give it a 3 out of 5. As for this next movie I'm gonna talk about, I can't believe I even considered doing a review of this. If you're trying to figure out why I watched this movie in the first place, it was because of a Facebook status. The movie I'm going to talk about is Aquamarine. Yeah, the one that stars that chick from Shark Night who plays a mermaid. And this movie is just terrible. Like, it tries to be a modern adaptation of The Little Mermaid, and it just fails. And this movie, even though it's like only a 90-minute movie, it took me like almost 2 days to finish it. Like, the first hour of this movie is just filled with like cringe moments. Oh my god. I had to like stop it every 5 minutes because I just could not take how cringy this movie is. And the acting was bad on top of that. And even though it's based on a book, the book kind of sounded like it had a lot more of an interesting premise than this, but beyond that, it was still a terrible movie. Although the last 20 minutes did speed things up and wasn't filled with too many cringeworthy moments. So, yeah, this movie was terrible. I'm gonna give Aquamarine a 1.5 out of 5. As for my final movie I'm going to talk about on my quick reviews, I'm going to talk about Oz, the Great and Powerful. My general thoughts on this movie are that it was okay. Like, the special effects I do like. The acting I didn't think was that bad. I also do like the costume designs. But I think my main problem with the movie is a combination of the wizard himself in the movie. As for Oz in this movie, basically he is a magician who is also a womanizer, and he's a greedy son of a bitch. Not how I pictured Oz in comparison to the one that appeared in The Wizard of Oz. And my second problem with the movie is, was it really necessary? Like, did we really need a prequel to such a classic as The Wizard of Oz? Like, I could have done without this movie. Like, I would have been okay if this had nothing to do with The Wizard of Oz. For my final rating of Oz the Great and the Powerful, I give it a 3 out of 5. So, among the movies I talked about, have you seen them? If so, what were your thoughts on them? And see you later.